Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've prepared another list video for all of you. This has been one I've personally wanted to make for a little bit, and now that we're getting closer to the end of the year, I thought this was good timing. I'm calling it 5 Marvel Omnibuses that are finally in my collection. Whether these were reprints or had been out for a while, these are all comic book runs I've wanted to have in some form or another, whether omnibus or not, and I'm so elated to finally have these picked up. Before we jump in to talk about these books though and why they made my list, I do want to shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're interested in picking up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can actually find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything on that site you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's omnibus list. First up today, in no particular order, we have The Black Cat by Jed MacKay Omnibus from Marvel Comics. Now, this is a run I had really wanted to check out for some time over the last year, and I was finally encouraged to take the plunge by a friend of the channel, Omnidog's Vault. I'm looking at you, Jess, but I'm really happy I finally did go ahead and dive into this book. It was a real page-turner. Honestly, I breezed through this omnibus fairly swiftly, and it absolutely helped turn me into a Jed MacKay fan. Since then, I've gone on to read his Moon Knight Omnibus, and I highly recommend both of these runs. They might be tonally pretty different, genre pretty different, but they both have some really striking character work, and they're just fun. They are really fun modern Marvel runs. Now, this is a run that has been out for a couple years now. It's still fairly newer, but when I had heard about it, there was a lot of buzz, and I am a Spider-Man fan overall, and this is one of these Spider-Man kind of supporting cast of characters. I had never read her in a standalone or solo series, but I heard a lot of praise for this run. And ultimately, I really wasn't disappointed. For me, I wondered how will she hold up outside of Spider-Man's shadow, and it turns out she doesn't need Spider-Man at all, and shame on me for doubting. I should say Spider-Man does show up maybe once or twice in this omnibus. There's a really fun annual where they kind of meet up and they have to stop something. But other than that, she really kind of holds her own with her own supporting cast. This is primarily a heist-driven piece of genre fiction, and I really like that. It's basically Black Cat robbing different members of the Marvel Universe, and I thought that that was a really fun wrinkle as well. It's not as much the kind of tights and flights super heroics as much as it is kind of heist narratives that are really dabbled with kind of interpersonal character drama and, yes, the occasional vigilantism here and there. Even when she's trying to save the world, she does it with kind of heist mechanics in mind. And to that end, a lot of her supporting cast of characters are part of her heisting team, and I really like that as well. We have a couple notable figures from Marvel past, but also a lot of lesser-known characters that are kind of repurposed here. This might be a weird comparison, but it actually kind of reminded me in the Gwenpool Omnibus where they had Batroc the Leaper kind of repurposed to be part of her ensemble team. We had a really similar vibe with a couple minor characters in this omnibus as well, and I think it's a fantastic way to kind of refresh old characters and make them feel totally new. The art throughout this collection as well was really eye-catching. I think some artists on this book I liked more than others, but it was just a really fun run, and I was really happy after a year or so in my kind of wish list, will I or won't I check this run out, I am finally happy to say I have this book in my collection. And it served the additional purpose of making me a really big Jed MacKay fan, which helped springboard me into buying that Moon Knight Omnibus, and I'm so happy I did, because I've covered that on my channel already a couple times, and that book just came out not too long ago at the time of the recording. At any rate though, don't miss out on Jed MacKay's Black Cat. Next up on the list is Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates, the Omnibus. This is another run that, since it started coming out, especially when this omnibus came out, I was really on the fence of when will I ever jump and finally check it out. I have always wanted to delve further into the character of Black Panther. I've dabbled with him in the past. I've seen him on team books like the Avengers or in big Marvel events. I've read some of his early stuff. I've dabbled with a little bit of Christopher Priest's run, but this is the run that always kind of really looked like it stood out to me, that I was always curious about. And thanks to a recent sale at Organic Price Books, the channel sponsor, I was able to pick this up for what I felt like was a very fair price. It came in beautiful condition, and honestly, what a fun run here. This book basically comprises two separate halves, all written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Essentially, the first half explores kind of the national roots of the country of Wakanda, some of its founding figures and kind of mythological beings. We also have T'Challa trying to keep a fractured nation together, deal with his own interpersonal and familial drama, and it's just kind of a really politically intriguing kind of deep dive into Wakanda. And the second half of the book is sort of a interstellar space opera. I know that sounds really wild, but it does have a totally different vibe. It's kind of like Black Panther Star Wars in a way, and somehow he still has a way of rolling that in together with all of the Wakanda stuff and bring it all back home for a really stunning conclusion. Both of these sides work together so well, and it gave me just a huge comprehensive experience of the world of Black Panther, of Wakanda, and I'm so thankful for that. Before this run, I have read Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on Captain America. I know that run gets mixed reviews, but I was a big fan of that. I reviewed it on the channel not too long ago, and almost everyone I talked to about that run always recommended the Black Panther run. I had a bunch of comments where people tell me, if you liked Captain America by Ta-Nehisi Coates, you have got to read Black Panther. So here we are. I finally picked up the omnibus when I found it for the right price, and I'm so happy I did. Welcome aboard. I'm so happy to have this in the collection. I did do a full review of this omnibus, though I'm not sure when I'm releasing this video. I have a couple backlogged right now, so it either just came out or will be coming out shortly, but it was really fun to sit down with this run and reflect on it recently. Couldn't recommend it highly enough, for those especially who want to check out T'Challa, the titular Black Panther. And hey, while you're listening, if you're enjoying this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. I'm always doing comic book themed list videos like this, comic book reviews, unboxings, even an occasional creator interview or live stream, and more. Anyway, thank you so much for considering. Now let's keep this list video right on going. Next up today, we have Thor by Walter Simonson Omnibus. This massive tome collects the entire run by this amazing writer. It does have the new kind of more modern coloring, so I know fans of the original coloring might not love this omnibus collection, but my understanding is that this is Simonson's preferred version, and honestly, I love the modernized colors. I don't always love that touch, but I think it really works for this series. This is definitely a high fantasy-like adventure with a dash of humor and superheroics thrown in there. I know for many, people consider this Simonson run the definitive Thor run of all time. I've read some fun modern runs as well, or parts of modern runs at least, but this run I've heard really takes the cake. I had read some of this run in the past in the form of these small standard size trade paperbacks I used to have once upon a time, but had long since sold off. When I heard they were reprinting this omnibus in the last year or so, I knew that this would be one to just jump on. I knew that this was finally my time to strike and make my way through this run proper. And now I am still finishing this book, but what I've read thus far, it has been so fun. I absolutely and immediately understand the appeal here. This really leans into some of the best Thor tropes in my mind. Like I said, it just really plays with that idea of straight up fantasy fiction. It's almost kind of incidental that Thor is a superhero. We see him more as this kind of mythological figure traversing all of these fun fantasy scapes and worlds with his supporting cast of warrior characters, and I really dug it. I think the art as well is just absolutely gripping and interesting. Like I said, they did do the kind of more modernized colors here, but I think that it just lends this really unique visual style that I don't have in a lot of my collection. And for the kind of fantastical elements, I do think those modern colors really make the images here pop. Again, I know that could be controversial. I certainly understand both sides of the argument, but I think I land with Simonson on this. I really do like the coloring. But yeah, it's a really really terrific run so far from what I've read. I would love to get some comments going. If you've read Thor by Simonson, let me know what you think. Give me some general feedback. Maybe go light on spoilers. As I said, I am still making my way through this run. So far, I really enjoy it, but what are your opinions on this run? I would also like to know if you would like to see a full review of this omnibus once I complete it. Let me know about that in the comments as well. This isn't one of my main nightly readers quite yet, but I do pick it off the shelf and read little bits of it at a time. But I am so elated to finally have this in my collection, as again, I've heard it considered one of the most definitive Thor runs of all time, and as someone who did have part of this run collected before, to have it now all collected and in this prestige oversized format, it really is just a dream. This was a really, really long anticipated Marvel reprint, and I for one am happy I had an opportunity to finally pick this one up while it was in print. Really happy it's in the collection, and just thought I'd show it off today. Next up on my list of Marvel omnibuses that are finally in my collection, we're looking at the Immortal Iron Fist and the Immortal Weapons omnibus from Marvel Comics. Now, this book came out last year in 2023, and it's kind of a fascinating book for those that don't know. There was an Immortal Iron Fist omnibus that had works by Ed Brubaker and Matt Fraction, which are of course collected in this book as well, but what they did, instead of just reprinting that omnibus, they expanded the omnibus, including additional issues of that run, the Immortal Weapons kind of mini-series, and a bunch of extras to make kind of an augmented, newer omnibus. They did a similar thing as well recently with JMS Thor and Gillen and stuff, where they kind of added to that omnibus. Anyway, I think it's a really fun thing that Marvel's doing, not maybe for the collectors that bought the original omnibus releases, but for those that held out, or for those that just want a more expanded experience, when they go to reprint, they kind of form a new omnibus with new material. Anyway, that's what we have here. The main draw is certainly that run on Iron Fist with Ed Brubaker, Matt Fraction, David Aja on some of the art, but we go throughout that run and into some of the next creators as they take up the helm, and it just really works. I really, really like this series. For those that don't know, this is a total like mythical martial arts kind of genre. There's definitely shades of something like Mortal Kombat also infused in this run. The art is absolutely gorgeous here from David Aja. I saw some of his art in the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye as well, but his style's even a little bit different in this run. I just really dig it. For those that maybe already like Iron Fist but haven't checked this out, a huge draw is that we get to know more about the lore of Iron Fist. We get to see stories and maybe meet characters that are previous Iron Fist, some of the history of the Iron Fist. And once we get over to the Immortal Weapons, we basically have different kind of chosen one martial arts figures from different realms or lands, and we get to see an epic scale tournament and further adventures. It is just a really good time. This is another omnibus as well that takes us far from just the straight up New York street heroics and into a more fantastical realm. And I do like that. I think that this was a really, really fun book, especially for fans of Iron Fist. Before this omnibus, I'd really only read the early years Danny Rand omnibus, which was fun as well, but it has kind of his early adventures that happened, I think, throughout most of the 70s. But it was fun to read a modern book, and as a fan of Brubaker and Matt Fraction and David Aja, this book was just one I wanted to have for some time. I always meant to pick up this run and trade paperback as it was coming out, or when I got to it at least. I heard so much just high praise and acclaim for this run, and now to finally have it all collected in omnibus format, it's just a huge collector goal for me. Like I said, this was a really sought after kind of whale of a run that I always wanted to check out, so I'm really eager to have it. I didn't even end up being able to get it in 2023 when it arrived, but I made it a priority, this and the Venom by Kate's omnibus, to pick up as some of my first books of 2024. So I am happy reflecting on this year, making this list to say this is finally in the collection. And last but certainly not least, to round out the video today, we have Daredevil by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev, Omnibus Volume 1. This is the first volume of a 2-volume set that collects the entire Bendis era of Daredevil. We also have some great artwork from David Mack earlier in this book, and this is an omnibus just whale or wish list item I've always had. For those that maybe are newer to the channel or haven't heard, this run is actually my favorite comic run of all time. time. Daredevil is my favorite character, and this to me is the cream of the crop storylines and epic kind of just run, just period. Full stop. This is it. Daredevil, it has just so many amazing creator-led runs. It's honestly pretty mind-blowing. There's really not a ton of bad runs in his modern history as far as I'm concerned. Maybe one or two that maybe aren't as strong as others, but Daredevil just attracts so many incredible creators. But for me, it just really starts and ends with Bendis here. I absolutely love what we get. I had this whole run collected for so many years in 3 Ultimate Collection paperbacks that collected all of these issues, but I found out that they were reprinting these omnibuses finally. I didn't have to pay out-of-print prices, so I thought it was finally time to say goodbye to my old paperbacks and upgrade to the omnibus. Now, at the time of this recording, they have only reprinted this one. The Volume 2 reprint, I think, is slated to come out in January. So I got to start saving up to pre-order that one so I can get it back in my collection. But I am so happy to have this in omnibus format. It's funny with Daredevil, that's a series that I've always collected in mostly paperbacks because I was just always buying the next collection I could find for Daredevil because I wanted to read and collect as much as I could. And at the time when I was earlier in my comic collecting journey, I didn't have enough money for omnibuses even when I would save up. So I just find trade paperbacks or standard size hardcovers, whatever I can get. I went from Guardian Devil with Kevin Smith all the way through basically Zdarsky, and even as I collected some of these other omnibuses nowadays, I never really upgraded my Daredevil collection just because I kept buying all of these smaller collections. But Marvel's been slowly reprinting and collecting more Daredevil in omnibus format, so I've slowly tried to upgrade my collection. I don't have everything in omnibus format yet, but getting this Bendis run is going to be a huge benchmark for me personally as a comic fan, comic collector, and just really rounding out more of my Daredevil collection in this kind of better prestige format. I love this omnibus edition. To see some of the art from both David Mack and Alex Maleev in oversize is just a real treat. And looking at some of these stories for the first time in many years in some cases, it's just a real joy. And now that I have this, I do want to sit down and make my way through it again. Hopefully time will allow to do that. I know I revisited some of the Brubaker era recently. I read through the Shadowland era recently with some of these other omnibuses. But now that I have the first part of Bendis's back in the collection, it might be time for a reread. When I thought about the prompt today, I had to talk about this book. I'm so very thankful to have it in the collection. Okay, and that's going to begin to round out our list today for 5 Marvel Omnibus editions that are finally in my collection. I know this prompt might seem silly, but looking at my collection recently, I just found myself so very thankful to have some of these long sought after titles in this beautiful format. I would love in the comment section though, are there any books that you finally thought, I have this in my collection, I actually have it, it's real? Maybe books you've gotten this year or even recently. I'd love to hear those items. I know as collectors, we sometimes make little goals or things to check off a list, and I know for me these were definitely big gets this year, and I'd love to hear some of yours. What were some of your big whales, your wish list items? Are there some that you're still really trying to collect, hoping to get a recently reprinted or printed Marvel Omnibus or DC Omnibus? Or really any just collected comic edition in general? What are your whales? What are your wish list items? What are your dream books you hope to have collected in physical form at some point? I'd love to know all that just so I could get to know you guys better as comic book fans. But thank you so much everyone for watching and taking a chance on this video. I really appreciate your time. If you enjoy it, definitely check out some of my other videos, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. If you enjoy what you saw in this video, please give it a like, maybe that comment we talked about, and go ahead and share the video with a friend. Thanks so much, it really helps me out, and have a good one.